Team, it's your boy Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with the Formula One rivalry that inspired Hollywood Part 2. We got Niki Lauda, we got James Hunt, we got them both in competitive cars now. If you haven't watched the movie, go watch the movie. But before we jump in, make sure you subscribe, ring notification bell, give the video a thumbs up. Let's do it. 76.
At the first race in Brazil, Hunt took pole position ahead of Lauda by 2/100ths of a second. But off the line, Lauda shot into the lead, and he would stay there, while Hunt incurred a sticky throttle, which resulted in his retirement and a mass exodus of shit from his Spectre. His teammate Jochen Mass did get one solitary point out of this, but by the end of the race, he was almost an entire lap behind Lauda. The next round was in South Africa, at the ultra-high-speed Kyalami circuit. Hunt again took pole position, but would again finish behind Lauda in the race after a hard-fought battle. But, I mean, at least he actually finished the race this time, right? Unlike the first one. And unlike the next one in Long Beach, after he was driven into a concrete barrier by Patrick Tapaye. Hunt, being a reasonable man, was pissed at this French wally, and perhaps was what spurred on this everlasting hatred of any driver that grew up in a country where they burn cars for sport. But ultimately, this
when Hunt was upset, he was gonna let you know. Them emotions was gonna shoot out, dog.
Hurt Hunt in the championship, especially given that in that race, Ferrari picked up a 1-2, further pushing Lauda into the lead of the World Championship. And then came the Spanish Grand Prix. In the time since Long Beach, Lauda managed to somehow roll over his tractor and break his ribs. Breathing for him was nothing short of torture, but considering he still had limbs to shift gears, push pedals, and turn a wheel, Ferrari demanded that he race. James Hunt, meanwhile, was professing the qualities that a racing driver must possess.
That is crazy. The man couldn't breathe, and Ferrari said, well, you still got arms and legs, so you gonna race.
In order to beat Mr. Lauda.
How'd you do it? Big balls.
Them big balls must have weighed him down at the start, however, as Lauda got the whole shot and took the lead for the start of the Grand Prix. He held onto it for a while before Hunt scythed past. His teammate Jochen Mass was pressuring Lauda for second before his engine turned into an offshore oil rig. Hunt, meanwhile, went on through to take the win, his first win of the season, and now back into championship contention. Right up until an FIA official broke out his tape measure and found his car to have been 1.8 centimeters too wide. Does this matter? Well, rules are rules and all that jazz.
I remember watching that part of the movie. I was heated, dog. I ain't like that at all. I was so goddamn. That wasn't right. That was not right, dog.
Oh, size does matter after all, eh? So with that, Hunt's win was taken away, and now he was back at square one, heading into the next round at Zolder. It was made even worse when his gearbox emitted blue smoke during the race, which, spoiler alert, usually means shit's gone wrong. And Lauda cruised home to take another dominant victory. Monaco was no better for Hunt. After qualifying way down in 14th place, his engine blew up in the race after a mechanic filled the tank with some of Fittipaldi's orange juice. Lauda again cruised to victory, and by this stage, he was so far in the lead of the championship that most were already thinking that it was game, set, and match. He can't possibly lose it now. He may be at Ferrari, but even they can't blow a lead like this. And of course, when the Grand Prix circus went to Anderstorp for the Swedish Grand Prix, Lauda did not take pole position. And nor did Hunt. In fact, that race was dominated by the six-wheel Tyrrell P34s, driven by Jody Scheckter and Patrick Tapaye. With a performance like this, I wonder why six-wheel cars never caught on in Formula One. I mean, apart from them.
I was about to say, I was looking at the car like, what on earth is 6 wheels?
Being expensive to maintain, a pain to run, and according to Scheckter, possessed the handling characteristics of Alfred Neubauer on a slab of butter. It was a complete one-off, and these guys really wouldn't be too much of a factor for the remainder of the championship. For the next round in France, Hunt finally got one up on Lauda as he took pole position and took his McLaren home to take victory, while Mr. Lauda went out after his crankshaft all over the circuit on lap 8. Ferrari, never change. No, wait, actually, do please. But if there was one race where Hunt needed to assert himself as a genuine contender and show Mr. Lauda that he was no joke, it would be the next one. Wait, hang on. Am I even allowed to show that? They were back in Britain for the British Grand Prix, because typically, that's held in Britain. This year, it was held at Brands Hatch in Kent, a racetrack that is about as amazing as it is unforgiving, and it was lined with spectators who were expecting nothing less than a British driver to win the British Grand Prix with a British team, even if that team was founded by a New Zealander and run by an American. Qualifying didn't do too much to spur the hopes of these British fans. Hunt set a time of 1:19.41, which was very good, but Lauda went one better. So So it was Lauda and Hunt, side by side on the grid. But off the line, the McLaren didn't move a hell of a lot, whereas the Ferrari behind him did. Regazzoni went past both he and the Lotus of Mario Andretti. He also saw a slight opening past Lauda, which would have given him the lead. And Clay, being a racing driver, decided to be a hero into one of the most awkward corners in motor racing. This didn't work though, and it almost took both Ferraris out of the race. Hunt said in his book that he found this extremely funny. He didn't find the next part funny though. By now, the track was littered with disposed racing cars, grass, and all manner of things that modern F1 fans can't seem to touch, so they stopped the race. Didn't really matter though. Regazzoni's gymnastics at Paddock Hill meant that Hunt's rear suspension was kaput. Regazzoni's own car was damaged too, as was the Ligier of Jacques Lafitte. McLaren, Ferrari, and Ligier all set to work on preparing the spare cars for their drivers, so that, they could take the restart. But then the officials put the word out that anyone caught doing that would be rolled up in a rug and thrown off the Humber Bridge. Because the first lap was technically complete before the red flag was shown, spare cars would not be permitted. But for these folks, they knew they could not repair the damaged cars in time, so they were pretty heated. And there was all manner of arguments and non-diplomatic French being flung around. Meanwhile, McLaren used this commotion to their advantage and repaired Hunt's original car in time for the restart. But of course, the officials caught on to that and told them to get because that car did not complete the first lap and thus would not be classified.
Wow.
However, by this stage, illegal cars running around were the least of the officials' worries, because by now, the pissed spectators were becoming pissed. They were throwing junk onto the track, stomping the ground, and chanting aloud, "We want Hunt." They quickly realized they did not like their odds of going up against 100,000 British fans that had been left in the sun, and eventually decided, fine, take the friggin' start. So for the second time, they leapt off the line, while Andretti initiated the Team America secret signal. Spurred on by the raucous crowd, Hunt began to chase after Lauda. The race began to simmer down as they began to settle in for the 2-hour stint. But eventually, Hunt started to draw closer and closer and closer, until eventually, on lap 44, he saw his chance and he passed him. It didn't mean the end though. Lauda was still on his gearbox. He wasn't going to let this ne'er-do-well get the edge on him, but while he was honing in on Hunt's gearbox, his own was starting to exhibit Italianism. He fell behind rather rapidly. Up the front, however, it was easy. Hunt went on through to take victory, and to add a little sweetener to this whole deal, his disallowed win from Spain was re-allowed and received a full 9 points from that weekend and put him back in the game.
I was hyped when they re-allowed that win, dog. I was so hyped. It's a battle to the end, dog. It is a fight to the end.
Though, once the masses and the crowd had left the circuit, it was only then that the officials had the balls,
Big balls,
to disqualify Hunt from the British Grand Prix for taking that second start illegally. This gifted the win to Lauda, and Hunt was left with a not so helpful points tally of nothing.
So why? That's so dumb. So why let him race? What? That's BS. It's such BS.
But if this race was important to the championship, the next was absolutely vital. By the time the 1970s had arrived, most of the obtusely long and dangerous tracks had been culled from the Formula One calendar. But one remained, the formidable Nürburgring Nordschleife, the track dubbed by Sir Stirling Moss as the Green Hell. And there was reason behind that name. One wrong move here meant a one-way ticket to meeting your maker. It was, and remains to this day, an unforgiving circuit. There were 150 odd corners in this configuration, and there were only so many volunteer fire marshals, health personnel, and helicopter pilots that could take time out of their weekend to sit around on a foggy German mountain range, in the off chance that someone survives a crash on this goddamn circuit, which is ultimately why Lauda lobbied for a boycott. This wasn't ideal for Hunt, however, as the dude was set to start from pole position, having outqualified Lauda by nearly a full second. But of course, Lauda had broken the 7-minute barrier just the year prior, so he was hardly going to give up a win that easily to Hunt. Still, he wanted the race canned, and so earlier in the season, in the spring, during a driver's meeting, he attempted to...
I remember this one, dog. This was scary. Scary for real, dog.
Arrange a boycott. The dangers of the circuit too apparent, especially when the Hockenheimring was a better, safer option for the drivers. It went to a vote. The decision came down to a single person, and it was final. Come the 1st of August, they will be racing. So there they were, on the grid, with half the track bone dry, and half of it soaked in Eiffel rain, and a championship which, by all accounts, should be within Lauda's grasp. Because even if Hunt were to win the rest of that year's races, all Lauda had to do was hang on to his coattails. Of course, Ferrari reliability is Ferrari reliability, but the McLaren itself back then, well, that wasn't $1 million either. Most of that grid started on wet tyres, Hunt and Lauda included, so both Hunt and Lauda were on the front row, and they were still on it as Clay Regazzoni shot off into the lead at the start. But in all his Swiss excitement, he spun off and fell back to fourth. Hunt took the lead back, but he wasn't exactly hooting away sweetly, for his teammate Jochen Mass had completely buried him, with his tactic of starting on dry tyres paying off sweetly. All those fools who started on the wet tyres would end up pitting for dry tyres at the end of the first lap. Hunt was relatively fine, although Lauda was now buried in the field and had to make up for lost time. It might have been a little unnecessary, but that's just what a racing driver does. As Ayrton Senna once rightly put it, you race to win, off in a tunnel, surrounded by trees, just going, on the hunt for Hunt. But in the blink of an eye, Lauda's life, as well as motor racing as a whole, would change forever. This was the last time that Formula 1 would race on the Nordschleife, and the Grand Prix that would entice Chris Amon to retire from the sport outright. Safety would become a paramount issue in the years to come, and Lauda, well, his story is one that remains in sporting folklore, even to this day, right from the moment where it all happened.
Jesus, man. One of the scariest scenes, dog, in that movie was
After hitting the wall, the fuel tank ruptured and spread flames all over the car. His car was then hit by Brett Lunger and then by Harold Ertel. Both Lunger and Ertel, as well as Guy Edwards and Arturo Mazzario, saw Niki still strapped inside his flaming Ferrari, his helmet removed and engulfed in flames. All of them went to help, with Mazzario being particularly brave by diving straight into the inferno, unbuckling the harness and pulling Niki from the wreckage. But he was badly burned, and after being flown to hospital, hopes weren't exactly high, to put it bluntly. And in a sight all too familiar with Grand Prix racing, it would have been fair to assume the worst. However, when a priest gave him the last rites and simply buggered off, this pissed him off. For him, there was no alternative. He had to stay alive. He had to fight to remain conscious. The superficial burns were horrific, and for a while, he could see nothing at all. Still, he would fight.
Crazy.
The damage wasn't purely on the surface though. His lungs were full of toxic material that needed to be vacuumed out, which made for undoubtedly the most uncomfortable experience in the world. But however uncomfortable it was for him, he wanted it done as often as possible, because that way he would recover as quickly as possible. For his own health, for sure, it was important, but racing was still on his mind.
That's so freaking insane, dog. It's so freaking insane, and I know y'all gonna hate me, but that's the end of part 2, y'all. We'll jump back part 3 and finish it. Make sure you subscribe, ring notification bell, give the video a thumbs up. It's your boy Neal, out.